guys, my name is Chris Martin with the Real Albuquerque Podcast, video cast, whatever cast. We have Indy here from PūrLife New Mexico. What's the technical name?
Of the shop?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just PūrLife.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure though.
Yeah, just
in the heat of the moment, I was like, maybe it's not PūrLife New Mexico, it's something else.
No, it's PūrLife, yeah.
So maybe give us a little rundown of what you guys do here, what you do, and a little bit about the industry.
Absolutely. So we are a licensed nonprofit producer here in New Mexico, and that means that we are licensed by the state of New Mexico, specifically through the Department of Health, to cultivate medical cannabis and to retail medical cannabis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we received our license at the very beginning of this year, and we've been working to get it open. We've been open for a few months now, and yeah, so we cultivate and dispense medical cannabis.
And this is the infamous 1,000-page application, correct?
More than that, but yeah.
1,500 or something like that?
Yeah,
something crazy?
It was like 1,400 pages that we submitted to the state. We put our heart and souls into it, and luckily it paid off.
And you were saying off camera a while back that only a few producers in town have said license or are able to do what you do. Is that correct?
There's a little over 30 licensed producers, licensed nonprofit producers like ourselves here in New Mexico, and we are one of those few. So
that's pretty interesting and pretty exciting if you're helping people. What kind of stuff do you see people? You said we can't kind of talk about this, but medical marijuana is pretty interesting in the sense it's highly legal, right?
Yes.
It's a controlled substance.
Yeah, it's a Schedule 1 controlled substance.
Schedule 1 controlled substance.
Mm-hmm. Up there with LSD and heroin.
Right. So, but yet you see it time and time again on the news and in medical studies that some people have to use this to maybe help their life, help their mindset, help whatever's going on in their body?
Of course, so we can talk about that, definitely. In New Mexico, in order to, I'll kind of explain the process and how someone goes about getting their medical cannabis card. So in New Mexico, the state, the Department of Health has approved qualifying conditions, and there are several qualifying conditions. I believe there's over 27 qualifying conditions that would allow someone to request from the Department of Health that they be admitted into the medical cannabis program.
Oh, that's interesting.
So what you would do is any doctor, nurse practitioner, or physician's assistant, physician's assistant or nurse practitioner would have to get a doctor's signature, but essentially any physician that has the ability to write prescriptions can sign a piece of paper saying this said patient has one of these qualifying conditions, and I think that they would be a good candidate for the medical cannabis program. It's not a prescription. Okay. The term is a recommendation.
Right.
And so once the doctor says this person has, for example, PTSD is one of those qualifying conditions, or chronic pain, or Crohn's disease.
Right.
The doctor says, all right, it is my medical, in my medical opinion, this person has this condition, and I think they'd be a good candidate for the program. And then the state reviews that and then makes a determination and gives someone their medical cannabis card.
And then they would come to here, apply with you guys, and then they would be being able to self-medicate, I guess is the term. I don't know.
No, absolutely. They would get a card, and the card basically says, I am a patient enrolled in the New Mexico Medical Cannabis Program, and I'm allowed to go to any dispensary in the state and purchase cannabis.
How does Colorado work? Because they're the ones on the major news, and they're saying Denver, of course, and Colorado Springs and Breckenridge. They had that show on CNN about the Breckenridge guys. How does different states? How are we handling this as a country?
So
this issue of legality.
It's a tricky subject. So New Mexico is one of 25 states in the country that have some form of legal cannabis. New Mexico is just medical cannabis, whereas Colorado is recreational and medical.
Oh, that's the difference. Okay,
yeah. So any person, you don't need to be ill or have a specific medical condition that requires you or allows you to get a card.
That's for Colorado and California? Isn't California?
No, California is medical as well.
Oh, okay.
They are going to be voting this November on the ballot whether or not they're going to legalize recreational cannabis. But right now it's Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, Washington, D.C. did actually vote to legalize recreational use.
Oh, really? In that small pocket in D.C.?
Yeah.
But then, once you get outside of Baltimore, it's not?
Well, the thing, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, I mean, D.C. is a little complicated because D.C. is technically controlled by the United States
federal government
and Congress.
Right.
So Congress essentially said, okay, even though you voted it in, we're not going to approve it. So no funds have been allocated to that.
Oh, so it hasn't been approved?
It has not. No.
Oh,
even though they voted it in.
Yeah.
Congress gets the final approval.
Gotcha. And they said no.
They said no. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah, the legality is always intrigues me because you see, people on the Facebook or the internet about Colorado and everything, and I guess it's becoming more prominent here in New Mexico as a state too. But what kind of challenges do you see as a business owner and an entrepreneur or lifestyle that people, when you say, yeah, I sell. Well, I'm an owner of a nonprofit medical marijuana consortium or whatever.
Yeah. Well, technically there are no owners. In New Mexico, we have to be a licensed nonprofit producer. So technically we're not allowed to have any ownership shares. So I'm just a board member. Like I'm on the board of directors of
Gotcha.
PūrLife. Yes. And then I run the dispensary. But it still is a tricky industry, and we know that what we're doing is not, the federal government does not approve of what we're doing.
Right.
Essentially. And the reason that the only way that we can that we're allowed to do what we're doing right now is a very tricky, a little tiny amendment to the federal appropriation, the funding bill. Mm-hmm. Essentially, there was an amendment. I believe it's section 542.
Okay.
That basically says the Department of Justice is not allowed to allocate funds to prosecute individuals that are acting within the confines of their state medical cannabis programs.
Oh, interesting. Because that leads to another question of, I could how come the feds almost bust in here, raid style, SWAT team and, shut everything down?
Technically, it's because they don't have the funding to do so.
Interesting.
And now, just out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals out of California, the court essentially said this applies to individuals, it applies to businesses, and there must be a finding of fact that someone like PūrLife or an individual was not complying with their state laws in order to go forward and do some sort of raid.
Gotcha.
So that's why they would do it, I think, if they had funding, but they're technically not allowed to.
Interesting. I didn't know that fact. So that makes it that's good to know.
But that means it's very important, and it behooves us to be as absolutely 100% compliant as we possibly can, and go above and beyond whatever recommendations or policies that the Department of Health requires of us.
Yeah, being in compliance is highly important in this industry, and that it's going to be very cool or interesting or whatever you want to call it. Looking back 10 years from now in this video or this podcast, perhaps, or you're like, oh my gosh, they're just worried about this, because this is going to go national probably, and probably worldwide to some degree. And I don't know, I picture it being just as easy as to get it like a cigarette, which some say cigarettes are worse than marijuana or other non-controlled substances.
Yeah, well, and without getting too much into the chemical makeup of the plant, I mean,
sure,
it doesn't have nicotine. Nicotine in and of itself within tobacco is addictive.
Right.
Cannabis is
not. But
not.
Nicotine's added to tobacco, correct? Or is it inside the leaf?
It's inside the leaf.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that fact.
Yeah, yeah.
So nicotine's inside the tobacco leaf itself?
Yes.
Because they're both plants. They're both, I don't know, tobacco's brownish or green?
It has big, bright green leaves, and then they dry it, and it gets all
brownish,
wrinkly, and
brown.
Yeah. But I mean, it's very similar. The cannabis plant is beautiful and green and luscious, and then we harvest it,
right?
And then we have to let it dry. It's a slow process, and then we have to let it cure. And the curing process is really important because, you know, those little globes, those little white protrusions from the leaf, those are called trichomes. And that is really where the essential oils, that's where the largest concentration of those essential oils like THC and CBD, actually in the raw state it's THC-A, it's in an acid form.
Oh, okay.
So it's very similar to tobacco. You have to let it dry and cure, and then it's ready for consumption.
That's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, you're not going to go into the details of what has rat poison, what doesn't have rat poison.
Yeah.
You guys have been rat poison free since the beginning, right?
We yes. We'll put that on the front door. Rat poison free. No, and that's the great thing. And we really, in the industry, we talk a lot about whole plant extractions and the importance of actually using cannabis in its pure form, in its flower form,
right.
Rather than isolating individual cannabinoids. For example, Marinol.
Okay.
That is a pharmaceutical pill on the market right now. That is a synthetic THC. It only has one cannabinoid in it, and that is THC.
Interesting.
And it's used to help cancer patients spur their appetite, reduce nausea.
I've heard this. People will vaporize marijuana. It was on like a documentary from California, and there is a guy who had AIDS, and he was using it to help him eat, like stay alive.
Yeah,
you know?
No, absolutely.
So it's interesting about the cancer patient because that's the same concept that I've heard before. Is people have to smoke or vaporize or however they consume THC or the marijuana. To just spur appetite, just to like eat, because otherwise they're like wasting away. And I'm like, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and there's, you know, everyone's heard, or it's the munchies. You know. Whenever you use cannabis, you get the munchies. But there is some truth to that. It's not just a myth that you do get more of an appetite when you use cannabis, and that is very helpful for some people that have problems eating. Oh yeah, absolutely. Eating disorders where you don't want to eat, you feel sick, or you, for whatever reason, it's helpful.
So I always thought when we were talking, this is a good friend of mine, Indy. So we were talking a while back off camera about how do you market, how do you build this industry in such a highly regulated, highly looked down upon in some eyes, from advertising agencies, from social media agencies. We talked about that. I can't make direct ads about selling guns.
Yeah.
Because we're in this class of the gun industry is in the same class as pornography is. Mm-hmm. And so banks don't even want to be a part of you. How do you go, I know banking is probably just as difficult for you as it could be for me and other sub companies, but how do you get past the marketing challenges, the banking challenge? I mean, the infinite challenges.
It is difficult. So in terms of marketing, our biggest challenge, just like many other businesses, is just letting people know that we exist. We're a brand new dispensary. We've been open for 2 months. We've been using a lot of social media. There is a New Mexico cannabis magazine called Kurple, Kurple.
Okay.
We had an advertisement with, and a lot of it is just word of mouth.
Interesting.
So we put an advertisement in the Weekly Alibi. So we don't have restrictions on print media.
Oh, okay. So print media is okay.
Print media is okay. So unlike Colorado, Colorado does not allow for print media or social media advertising for cannabis.
Really?
So we're fortunate that we're able to use those forms of media. But
and print media is kind of old school too,
Oh no,
we're going back to
absolutely.
We're going back to like the beginning.
Yeah. But the neat thing is we track every new patient that comes into the dispensary. We ask them, how did you hear about us?
Right.
And what's nice is we have a little bit of time to interact with a new patient because we have to fill out all of their forms. We have to get them entered into our computer systems and software. Sure. And so I have a tally, and every single day we check off, Google. We found you on Facebook. We found you on Twitter. We found you on Purple Magazine. And I have
the guy with the yellow sign.
Yeah, and yeah, we have a sign waiver. Surprisingly,
is he racking up some guys?
Yeah, I was so skeptical of waiving a sign. I really was. Every time I see a sign waiver, I pity them, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not gonna go there because that's ridiculous. But it serves its purpose very, very well, and dollar for dollar, that is the best advertising that we've done.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So for every hour that person is out there waving a sign, I could get 2-3 brand new patients that had never even known that we existed. That converts into a sale.
Right.
And we have that customer for life. They'll never forget that we're here.
Yeah, and you have that lifetime value of the customer, the LTV, And what's really interesting is your demographic is so spread out.
Absolutely.
So there's no narrow section, I don't think, if I were to picture how I would advertise or market to this industry. There's no narrow section of this, because some people don't want to know that they consume this medically or recreationally, right?
It's tough.
Some people are very adamant that they want you to know if you've ever been on Instagram or Facebook.
That's true, yes.
They're like, they want you to know that they're doing that, or Snapchat.
Loud and proud.
Yeah. And then there's some people don't even know what a computer is.
That's true.
Right? So old school methods like digital or like print media, which I don't, or the sine wave. So it's really interesting how you have to balance all these different avenues.
Oh, totally. Really, you're absolutely right. But social media has been, you'd be so surprised how many people are on social. My grandparents.
No, I know.
I'm
an advocate of social media, 100%. But I'm saying some people don't believe in that. And
yeah, you're right.
But that's all coming from the grandparents, coming from the grandkids effect, is what I call it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How do you get to see your grandkids?
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
You got to see them on the old computer.
Yeah. It's always weird to see like your grandparents like commenting, or your like older family liking something. Like, what's going on here?
It was really funny the other day. Well, it's funny and sad. I was at my grandparents' house, and my grandpa was working on the computer. He has a nice big Mac. Like, he has a nicer computer than I do, but he just uses it to send emails and stuff. But he comes back to where I was talking with my grandma in the living room, and he's like, something's wrong with the computer. I don't know what I did. I clicked on something and something went wrong. And I'm like, oh no. And he's really sad. And then I go back, and in my mind I'm really skeptical, because I know that there's like all these prop-ups, on any website. It's like, your computer is crashing. This was the craziest one I've seen. He clicked on a link from Google. A black screen came up and it said, warning, hard drive crashing, must reset, or something. And it was like flashing, warning. And my grandpa's like, what did I do? And I'm like, it's an ad, Grandpa. Like, it's
so you just hit the escape button and
he just closed that window. It was a complete scam. And I felt so mad. If I could just reach through that computer and strangle whoever thought that was a good form of advertising. It's ridiculous, but
that's funny.
A little off topic, but yeah.
It's a good story. That makes me laugh, because I've been there too, and with your parents or grandparents or just the extended family who's older, you're like, it's okay, just calm down. Yeah, we'll get through this.
Right? And he was like, it says the computer's crashing. I'm like, I don't think the computer would
tell you that.
Say that.
It would just do it.
It would just be like, something's wrong.
It starts smoking or something. So what do you find, what kind of challenges you guys have outside of maybe marketing and business growth that you find challenging and exciting at the same time?
I think one of our biggest challenges now is, once we get a patient into our dispensary, how do we retain them? How do we make sure that they're going to come back and continue purchasing their medicine?
So is that through how do you control that, through the experience or through
through any single way that I possibly can? Whatever I can manipulate to make that experience better. So one, training our retail staff, or training our cannabis educators, essentially, as best as we possibly can. I want patients to feel like they can ask our staff anything, and we'd be able to answer those questions. And if not, we'll work our hardest in order to answer those specific questions. No one leaves with a lot of questions. So I that's a very important process. We make sure everyone's friendly. We have a very nice environment here that's welcoming and open. That's important. I really try to make it as easy as possible for patients to know what we have available at all times. One thing that we get phone calls all day long. All day long we get phone calls, and people just really wanted to know the menu. And we have a very large menu, and so we'd have to sit there and read the entire menu. And so I created a phone platform to where, you know, you can call, press 1 to hear our flower menu, press 2 to hear our concentrate menu, 3 for our edible menu.
Oh, that's interesting. So that alleviated some physical person having to read this thing off all the time. It's like movie phone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think of that Seinfeld episode.
Yeah, right?
Tell me, why don't you just tell me what number you so, and then that's really important to keep that up to date, and then, you know, you can still transfer a call out here.
Right.
But it's reduced the number of calls that we get by 60%.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So people will come in here, check out whatever, and you know, being educated in the product is always essential, whatever business you're in, whether you're selling cars, widgets, computers, or
Absolutely.
You know, medical marijuana or cannabis is whatever you prefer. So how do you teach and get everybody on page with this? And because it's a highly complex substance, and I've heard on some documentaries that it's, you know, there's different strains for different things, and you know, it just confuses me. I don't understand any of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, looking from a bird's eye view, it can be a little daunting, but you know, once you really get down and break it down, you really start to understand it. And for us, consistency is very important, and so I make sure training is incredibly important. So in order for, I don't want one patient to get different information from different staff members I have. And so that's why training is such an important part. And once you really, in my training method, I break it down to the plant itself. I talk about the anatomy and how fascinating the plant is. It's a dioecious plant.
What's dioecious for those who are not near their Webster's dictionary?
It is where there's a male plant and a female plant, and they're completely the species, the cannabis plant, has male plants and it has female plants.
Sure.
Whereas the vast majority of flowering plants
have a stem and a sternum, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In
so
one,
they can
plant.
self-pollinate.
Yeah.
They can self-pollinate. Whereas the cannabis plant is not like that.
That's
it has a female plant and a male plant. The male plant pollinates the female plant, and then it produces seeds. So we only grow female plants because the female plant is what creates the beautiful flowers that we use and derive our medicine from. Yeah.
Huh.
And so really what's going on is the female plant, it's excreting all of these oils, these trichomes, because it wants to attract pollen. And so, and there's other reasons too. It's also a preventative measure too. It's almost like a sunscreen and a protect.
Oh, okay.
But it also helps the plant attract pollen. And so this plant, once it goes into its flowering stage, these female plants just want pollen. I mean, it's a living species. It just wants to reproduce, and we deprive it of a male, and it continues to reproduce and grow flowers, and they get bigger and larger and more resinous. And
interesting.
Yeah, to the point where all of the energy from the plant is being completely consolidated where the flowers are, and all of the other smaller leaves are just dying off. They're turning yellow. Because all the energy of the plant is going into the flower.
Is this how everybody makes medical marijuana?
That's
that process? Because that's really interesting. I had no idea that's how it was.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you push the plant as far as it can possibly go.
And then once you cut the flowers off, then you give it pollen, and then it grows back again?
No. And then it's done. You actually cut it from the stalk, and then you dry it, and you start.
Oh, so then you start from a new seed all over again.
You start all over again. Yeah,
we
use clones. We don't start from seed. We do some genetic search through seeds, but most of it is through a clone.
Explain to us what a clone is in this process, because you guys make your own or you you grow and harvest your own medical marijuana in a discrete location.
Yeah.
Somewhere close to Area 51, you know, in the desert. You guys do the RV thing, like Breaking Bad, or
no? We need much more space than we could find in an RV.
I'm just picturing all those like classic like movies where they like, what's that one where they go on like a river trip, and they end up in like this big medical marijuana farm, and like the light's on fire, then everybody's all, you know.
I think that is Without a Paddle.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I love that movie.
Yes, I just pictured that, you know, like you just like walking around New Mexico and you're like, oh my God, where am I now?
There's probably a lot of places in New Mexico where you could do that and stumble across a big grow operation. Go up near Taos. I'm sure you'll find a few.
Yeah.
But no, we have two cultivation locations. One's indoor, one's outdoor.
Oh, cool.
And what a clone is we're able to take a single leaf from a vegetative plant.
Okay.
A plant in its vegetative stage, and we take that leaf, we make a little slice on the bottom of the leaf, so you have a leaf.
Right.
And you stick it in a root gel, which has really concentrated vitamins, minerals, whatever the plant needs to live, and then you stick it in a cube. It's almost like a fiberglass cube called a rock wool cube. And you give it enough love and attention and a little bit of light, make sure it's wet in a really humid environment, and that single leaf will start to sprout roots 10, 15 days.
Really?
And then once that single leaf continues to grow and create roots, that is a 100% identical clone of the plant that it came from. And so that's what's really neat about genetics in the cannabis industry, is because you can have, just like any plant, your rose bush. One of your rose bushes is doing a lot better than the other one, and it's getting the exact same water, light, everything.
Yeah, everything's perfect.
That's just the genetics of that rose bush are just better. You know, that plant
and that's life. That's called what do they call that? Oh, I can't
Darwinian.
Think of it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But I can't think of the term, but yeah.
Yeah. So like a survival of the fittest.
Yeah,
almost?
exactly.
Yeah.
The bad genes will die off.
Yeah.
And then you have some sort of superior plant.
Yeah.
And then that plant will soon make another bad plant.
Yeah.
And that doesn't live, right?
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
It just keeps going.
But we're doing plant eugenics, essentially, because we basically only take the absolute best, hardiest, highest yielding, highest potency plants, and then we clone them.
What kind of THC concentrated potency? What kind of plants? Well, I guess maybe what's the best seller, and what's the deal with that?
So we've noticed that right now THC still remains king in the industry.
You're talking about just the essential oil of it and the.
I'm saying if we have a flower for sale.
Oh, okay.
And we have, let's say, 15 different strains and flowers available. Our best seller is going to be the highest potency flower.
Oh, okay. Someone's not going to go. Well, what is the highest potency?
So the highest that we've had so far was right when we opened. We had a 27.4% THC flower.
Now, if you're making this plant, you're cloning it from one plant to another.
Yeah.
How do you say this is 27.4216 repeating THC content?
So we have to, in New Mexico, we're required to send every single product that we sell out to a state licensed medical cannabis testing laboratory.
So everything that gets consumed here
has an accurate potency.
Everything that's consumed in a flower or plant form has to get tested?
Has to get tested.
Now, the other stuff that you buy, maybe that edibles comes from somebody else and they've already done their testing, or does that have to go as well?
All the edibles contain our own medicine as well.
Oh, okay.
So what we do is we give them our flower, they process it.
Oh.
Then once they process it, they turn it into a concentrated oil. They get the oil tested, and then they know the potency of it.
Oh,
and then that's how they can do their dosing. They know that, you know.
Yeah, one gummy bear is going to get you whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you just have like Cisco Foods or Foods in New Mexico or whatever, just making like THC enriched gummy bears, like mass quantity? I'm picturing like
I wish that there was that many people.
How it's made and just like a factory of like.
I wish it were that way, because I wish there were a little bit more competition.
Because you have to have some sort of co-packer to do all this, right?
Yeah, so they have, and the people that process our materials into cannabis-derived products like edibles, they are also licensed cannabis manufacturers with the state of New Mexico.
So yeah, there's a lot of legality. Everybody has to carry their own license.
There's a lot of licensing.
So that's interesting. Oh, yeah. Go for it.
The manufacturers, they can't cultivate or retail cannabis. The only thing they're allowed to do is to take cannabis from a producer
and process it.
Then they turn it into an edible product or what have you, and then they retail it back to us or wholesale it back to us.
That's interesting. So what's the process? We take the clone, we take the little leaf, put it in the super juice.
Yeah.
Put them in the fiberglass rock thing.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Does that work with all plants, by the way?
I don't think it works with all plants.
That's crazy that you can like. I'm just picturing like you take a lizard's tail falls off, you put it in the super juice, and now you got a lizard.
Yeah.
Or like Fifth Element, where they just have like her pinky finger or something like that, and they're like rebuilding her.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that with all plants. It works the best when you have brand new leaf growth. It wouldn't work like on a woody type of plant per se. But that's a good question. I don't really know.
You hear that with like jade plants and stuff like that. You just like cut thing off, or the aloe vera plants. You just like cut something off and like put it in soil, and next thing you know, you have a plant. I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah, like rosemary. I did that with rosemary's a little harder too because it's a little woodier. But you can do that. Yeah.
So we only have a few more minutes here, but I want to go down the process. So we have the clone.
Yep. That
grows for 15, 20 days.
Yeah, it can actually start to sprout roots. We had a great success, and I sound like Borat. Great success. We had roots sprout in 9 days. I make myself laugh.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about
that. And then once it gets enough roots from that rockwool cube, then we have to transplant it into a larger pot. And then it gets transplanted maybe 3 times throughout its life.
To bigger pots?
And then it's in a vegetative stage for a few months, and then it's in a flowering stage at the end of its life cycle. It's different depending on the genetics or the type of plant. Mm-hmm. And then it flowers for several weeks. Then you cut it down, you dry it. It dries for a week possibly, and then it cures for several weeks. And then it's able to sell.
So this whole process of clone to, raw product that you can sell or get tested and then sell, is it a few months, 6 months or something like that?
No, it's not that long, but it's
3-4 months.
Yeah, right around there.
Okay, that's crazy. So you'll take that, then depending on what you're getting from that, whether it's the oil or everything has to go out and get tested. Then do you know how they test for THC? There's 2 different ways, and one of them uses gas and the other uses light. That's about as So they'll vaporize it with heat? One of the ways that they test, it does use heat, and so again, this is going to get a little sciencey. The plant in its raw form, only has THC-A in it, maybe a little bit of THC, but THC-A, which is the acid form.
The acid form.
Okay.
Once cannabis gets heated, it has to be heated. It loses a CO2 molecule, and then it turns into THC.
Interesting.
So, and it loses about 12% of its weight to turn to THC. So from THC-A to THC, there is a conversion, and there's about a 12% loss. So some labs test for cannabis in its raw form, and they test the THC-A percentage, and then they use a mathematical equation. I don't think it's that complicated, but they just basically
times point
yeah.
0.012.
Yeah. I don't know if it's around there. There may be some other factor.
Sure. But they have their algorithm, right?
Yeah, and it's super simple. But that's how they come up with the THC potency. The other form of testing is they actually heat the product and then test the THC.
Oh, okay. So when you see these guys who are on Instagram or Facebook and they have the crazy vape smoke, you know, and the rings and all that crazy nonsense, that is the same process that you do with vaping of marijuana. You just superheat it, and then it turns into a gaseous state.
Well, you can vaporize cannabis oil, and we sell vaporized. We sell vape pens here too, and it's a very convenient, very discreet way of medicating. And yeah, absolutely, they have the oil. There's a little atomizer. The atomizer heats up the oil, not to a state of combustion like smoking.
Right.
And then the patient vaporizes the medicine.
Interesting. That's all the stuff's very
it's
complex and interesting, and the THC-A and the CO2 molecules, and there's a lot of science behind this.
There's a lot, and it's been it's been a fun learning process. Absolutely.
Now, you didn't grow up as a kid and say, one day, Dad, I'm gonna be a board director of a nonprofit medical cannabis organization.
No, that was definitely not in the cards in the very beginning.
So how did all this come about? If you can talk about it.
No, yeah, absolutely. So I grew up here in New Mexico, went to UNM, and then I went out to St. Louis to law school.
SLU or WashU?
I went to SLU, yeah.
Okay.
And then I graduated from law school, took the Missouri bar. Then,
so you're a practicing lawyer in Missouri?
I'm a practicing lawyer in Missouri. Yeah.
Okay, so if I have any Missouri, I have family in Missouri. So if I have any family or Missouri-related law stuff, I'll come to you.
Or I could direct you. I still know a lot of lawyers there. So
that's cool. I didn't know you were a lawyer.
Yeah. And then my wife and I moved around a little bit. Went to Denver, practiced there for a little bit. And then we moved back to New Mexico, where I ended up taking the New Mexico bar.
Oh, so you're a New Mexico lawyer too? Mm-hmm. Oh, so I don't have to worry about Missouri. I can do New Mexico stuff too.
Yeah. You could just contact me here directly. So
do you charge by the minute or second?
I'm sure we could break it down to that, but yeah. And then so the way I got involved was after I got done taking the New Mexico bar exam, I had a little bit of time where I was waiting on my test results to come back.
Okay.
And I was working with a company, or I was helping a company on an application, and then PūrLife, and then I just dove headfirst into this application.
Oh, so you didn't necessarily start the company. Someone was already kind of working on it. You were the interim lawyer kind of guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is pretty cool.
My dad was working on the security proposal part of the application, and then it just grew and grew and grew, and we were taking on more and more parts of this application, and then that was all I did. And then I completely became an expert on medical marijuana cannabis law in New Mexico.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So if you need any medical marijuana law advice in the state of New Mexico and probably state of Missouri.
Missouri's weird for cannabis. Yeah.
But you probably still know the laws out there or can guide somebody in that direction. Contact Indy White.
Yeah. Contact me, I'll let you know.
I'm just thinking Better Call Saul, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but just on the business side of cannabis.
Not like you got pulled over.
Yeah,
and you had a cigarillo or something.
I know a lot about medical cannabis law, and cannabis law in general. That's kind of it's almost a hobby now.
That's pretty interesting. Well, keeping up on law is ever changing probably. Where do you see this industry going in New Mexico? What are your predictions? What in the last few minutes here, where do you think this is all going to head? Not necessarily PūrLife, but the industry in New Mexico.
I think we're going to go recreational in a few years. I think the rest of the country is going to go recreational.
And what do you think? 1 year? You said a few years. You're just thinking maybe 1 to 3, 2 to 4. I just made up random increments. That's weird.
Yeah. My guess would be within 2 years, somewhere within that time, recreational will get voted, will get passed.
In New Mexico?
In New Mexico. It's going to have to do it probably through a referendum, constitutional amendment, is my guess in how it would come. And then it would take probably another year to implement. So we're looking at 3 years. That's my guess for 3 years from 3 years from now. Recreational will hit New Mexico.
And what do you think on the national scale, if you were to guess? This is all predictions.
Yeah. Well, cannabis is on the ballot in 8 different states coming in November.
So it's in 27 states, or that was 27?
That's just where some form of cannabis
was in 27.
It's 25.
25. Okay, 27 was the conditions
constantly.
that you can get a card with.
Right. Correct.
I'm thinking 27 for some reason. So 25 states plus 8. So you're looking at 32, 33. People are going to be like, hey, this guy doesn't know math.
No, it's constantly growing.
Yeah, 33 states out of 50, which is pretty good.
But as soon as big states like California start going recreational, which I have a feeling they're going to go, and Arizona is going to actually vote on recreational cannabis.
So is it?
And that's one of the most conservative states in the country, and they're gonna vote in recreational cannabis potentially this November.
Oh wow! So
that's gonna.
If Arizona, Colorado do it, and New Mexico does it, does that force other states like Texas to do it? Because I know Texas is not.
Texas already passed a medical marijuana law.
Oh, okay, but not recreational.
Not recreational, no. It's
because when you get these big heavy hitter states,
oh yeah,
it's like the election,
right?
Well,
then they're going to feel left out of all of this additional tax revenue.
Well, and it's like, is it kind of like the election that who cares about Montana because they have 1 vote, but like California is like 50 votes, so you want to win California, not just Montana, or like, sorry, Montana.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, New Mexico's the same way. We're like 1 vote, so like no one cares about us, right?
Yeah.
Who cares about New Mexico? Let's get like Connecticut or something.
But we're actually a pretty good model for the New Mexico for medical cannabis laws. But eventually, I think every state eventually is going to go recreational. I'm sure there'll be a few holdouts. Texas might be one of those holdouts. I mean, I don't know.
Well, they're their own country anyway, so they just do whatever. When Texas Ranger wants to recreational smoke, he does it, right?
Walker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't wait for law to recreational smoke.
Rules, yeah. Yeah.
What kind of tax revenue is the state of New Mexico? I heard some crazy number the state of Colorado's making.
Yes.
It's like outrageous.
Almost $200 million, I think, last year Colorado made.
And they just made
cannabis.
that. I mean, we have only a few minutes, and this is going to be a long conversation. There's so much to talk about. And I feel like we're just getting started here. But what is the ramifications of people medicinally and recreationally using marijuana in their daily lives? How does that affect the general public? You know what I'm saying? At large?
No, of course. Well, one, it's not harmless by any means.
Right.
But when you compare it to some of the other substances that are widely acceptable and widely available, alcohol primarily is what I'm thinking, and nicotine.
Sure.
I think the role that those play on society vastly outweigh whatever negative effects cannabis may have. But truthfully, it's
a class 3?
What is that?
Substance? Medical marijuana or marijuana?
No, it's 1.
Cannabis. That's right. Class 1.
Cannabis is Schedule 1.
Schedule 1, controlled substance.
Yeah, but the truth is, we're learning more and more of the medical efficacy of using cannabis for all different sorts of ailments that people have. And truthfully, when it comes to recreational use, people should have the right. People should have the right to be able to use cannabis in their own home and not operate any machinery, just like alcohol.
Yeah, right.
But it's keeping cannabis criminalized does more to deplete our police resources and the amount of money that we dedicate to our criminal justice system for something that is far less harmful on society than some of the other things that we accept as completely normal, and we can see Budweiser commercials all over television.
Oh, right, yeah, you're right about that. And so, I mean, there's just a lot going on in this industry and space. It's really cool to know that you're like on the ground level, and it's interesting to hear about all this stuff. I mean, we could talk hours about all this and what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, what should happen.
Yeah.
Man, pretty interesting stuff.
That's great.
What else do you want to talk about? We just have the last few minutes here in the podcast with Indy White of PūrLife New Mexico.
Basically, I just think if people are interested, there's a lot of resources out there to learn about cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
It is not this the devil's lettuce, what it was purported to be, in different generations, older generations. And it's a fascinating plant. It's an amazing form of medicine, and I just cannot be more proud to be doing what I'm doing right now and helping the qualified patients of New Mexico.
Yeah, it's really great to hear. For people on the outside looking in, I know it's the mindset of, oh yeah, these guys are just drug dealers, right? Or they're just, you just take a plant, you grow it, and you smoke it and whatever. But there's actually real science behind this. There's a real process. You're taking clones. And I bought, essential oils, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And doTERRA has essential oils. And when I first got essential oils like peppermint or something like that, which is pretty interesting, my friend gave me this book. And it had a book and said like, sore throat. And it said, okay, you can either not vaporize, but humidify. What did they call that?
Yeah.
You can humidify or vaporize peppermint and breathe it in. You can take it in water, and that will help your sore throat naturally versus whatever. Now, I'm sure that there's people in the medical industry, why that analogy is going to take us to another analogy of people saying, okay, this strain X is good for yada, yada, yada. This strain is good for this. If you have depression or sleep issues, you're going to want to take this strain.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure it's going to get to that point where you're like, okay, here's my problem.
I hope it does, and I hope they map the entire cannabis genome, and they will someday. And so exactly what you're getting, and terpene profiles and flavor profiles are going to be getting more and more important in the industry. And I think that we're going to find that medical benefits probably. You're going to learn more from the terpene profile than you do just the THC percentage.
What's a terpene profile?
It's a flavor profile and the aromas. Yeah, there's all different kinds of different smells and terpenes contained within the cannabis plant. And a lot of times you can use those to hone in on specific medical attributes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
And I really just, my goal for the industry is I hope it stays in the hands of small business. And I really...
Well, if not to say, who's the tobacco big business? I can't remember the name. Not Johnson & Johnson, but it's... I can't remember. Who cares? But you don't want it to be
Philip Morris?
Yeah, Philip Morris.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Philip Morris, and then you're going to see a green Marlboro logo on every Indy race car.
Yeah.
No relation there.
No
right?
relation, yeah. And that's my hope. I mean, I think we're set up for it to stay in the hands of small business.
Well, you're
right
making
now.
massive amounts of capital from this stuff because you grow it and organize it. So you're going to see growth of small businesses turn into medium-sized businesses to large-scale businesses, I'm sure, in the next few years.
Oh, yeah. You're seeing that happen in Colorado now.
Yeah, you see it on TV on the CNN show. On Colorado, all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's crazy. Well, it looks like you're open for business. We're
getting ready. Yeah.
People are coming in here and taking care of things. So, which is quite convenient because this is basically the end of the podcast.
All right, great.
We don't have much more time left. So, is there anything else you want to say to close up?
No. I mean, this has just been a great opportunity. I can't wait for the program to grow and for people to learn more and more about cannabis in general, and I hope it just becomes more mainstream. And I just appreciate the opportunity to get out in front of people and kind of tell my story and tell the story of PūrLife.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I didn't know that it was this complex and this interesting, so it's pretty cool. How can we get a hold of you or PūrLife? Not necessarily Indy, but PūrLife.
Best way would just be to go to our website. So our website is PūrLife NM. So it's PUR without the E, LIFENM. So PURLIFENM.com. It'll make sense once you see the logo.
And we'll link that up in our podcast and videocast stuff. Or they can call the office here. Pardon me, I'm all burpy from the water.
It's special water.
I hope not. But what's the office number?
The office number here is... Chance is getting it for us. 433 2672.
There we go. Now we can call and get the menu.
I never call myself, so Yeah.
So we can get the menu. All right, guys. My name's Chris Martin with the Real Albuquerque. I can't even say it. The Real Albuquerque podcast. This is Indy White with PūrLife New Mexico. I guess managing operator. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a board of director and I manage the dispensary.
All right. You guys can find him here at Manal and Carlisle.
Yes, Manal and Carlisle.
If you're in the Albuquerque area, kind of where that Home Life furniture store is.
Right next to High Life Furniture.
Or High Life.
We're in the same shopping center as Savers and Planet Fitness, right next to High Life Furniture.
Used to be the old Ultimate Electronics location, not this building, but in that area.
In that same shopping center, yeah.
So you can find them here, or find the yellow spinning sign.
Find the guy waving the sign with the cannabis leaf on it.
So, okay, just to end it, what's the percentage of where people come from? Because you said the sign guy's up there.
Oh, the sign guy's definitely up there. So right now I think it's going for,
I'm
not
thinking
in
of pie
total,
chart.
like new patients today, it's going Google, Facebook, or it's probably going friends, Google, Facebook, sign guy. But I'm saying dollar for dollar what I spend on the sign guy, best advertising there is.
So if you're in an industry that's highly regulated, maybe the sign guy's the way to go.
Wave the sign.
That's your marketing tip for today. Go old school, print media.
For sure.
All right, guys. We'll see you later. See you next time.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, guys.